Greetings, Michael.
Hello, Carl. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Fantastic. What's new?
God, what's new?
What's new in the blue shirt nerdy weekend reading times 27,000
Oh God,
universe?
just juggling everything. It's been an interesting couple of months with we've had a lot of growth at XY Applying Network. We've had a lot of growth at Advice Pay with lots of enterprises that now want to come into this world of charging.
Wait. Tell me real quick. What's Advice Pay?
So Advice
Not
Pay
that I
is
don't
our
know, but tell the
yeah.
people.
So Advice Pay is our payment platform for advisors that are charging planning fees. Like if you want to do a planning fee for a millennial and they don't have a checkbook, so they can't write you a check, how do you get your fee? If they don't have an investment account and you need to bill them, we made a solution for that, which we aptly called Advice Pay, because I always name businesses very literally. Like new planner recruiting, guess what we do? Advice Pay, guess what problem we solve? But I mean, advisor charging fees have been out there for a while, but we built this originally, particularly for advisors that are doing like retainer fees, monthly subscription fees, stuff that's more recurring, where you really don't want to get checks over and over again every month and a quarter across a whole bunch of different clients. And so, we're getting a lot of firms, a lot of large firms now that are interested. And since Schwab announced a little ways back that they were now doing monthly subscription fees as a part of their intelligent advisory platform, now Schwab Intelligent Portfolios Premium or whatever they're calling it, we're seeing a whole lot more people that want to talk about doing monthly fees for their planning services now that Schwab's doing monthly fees for their planning services.
It's so funny to me that such a simple such a simple thing can turn into such a massive headache if you don't have an easy solution.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked to some very large firms that they're saying like we bring in 30 to 50 paper checks a day. Large broker dealers have lots of advisors and clients.
That's one of those first world problems.
Yeah,
but if it's your problem, it's a problem.
Yeah, well, they had 4 full-time staff members whose sole job was just to process all these paper checks and track them and reconcile them and get them remitted to the right advisor across the whole organization. And we were like, yeah, or you can use our software and a part-time person who will be bored. Like,
right.
That sounds good. So
right.
Yeah, we've kind of ended out at the front edge of this shift in fees to charging more standalone fees and really recurring fees. Yeah. I think that historically planning fees was like, I get paid a check once and then that's that, which is hard to model around. But when you do it with monthly subscription fees, ongoing retainer fees, it's recurring revenue. So you can actually build and scale a business. And I think that's why we're seeing a lot more momentum behind it.
And where do people, is that just advicepay.com?
Advicepay.com. I keep it as simple as we possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you a question. I want to take you back, whatever. How far back do we have to go when you were just a financial planner? That was your primary job. How far back do we have to go?
I don't know, a little over 10 years ago.
Okay, so let's go back 10 years. You're on a plane. Somebody sits down next to you, and they say, what do you do for work? How did you answer that question? This isn't, by the way, I don't want to talk about elevator pitches. I'm just curious, what did you call yourself?
What did I call myself?
What was on your business card?
Wealth manager. Well, so it blended. Director of financial planning for a while because I was running
before that,
the planning area. Wealth manager. And then before that was just financial. Actually, God, before that, I was at a broker dealer, but it was financial consultant.
Yes. I'm so excited because nobody else, I'm trying to remember, I was so confused for the first 10 years of my career because I wish I had every business card because all of those financial consultant. I remember how proud I was because I have some buddies that they're management consultants at Bain or McKinsey. I'm a consultant,
I'm a consultant too. I'm a financial consultant. Of course, they get paid $300,000 a year and you sold an IRA for a $300 commission, but you're both consultants.
And they got their MBAs from Wharton and I went to Salt Lake Community College. There's nothing wrong with Salt Lake Community College. So anyway, I just think this idea of what we call ourselves is so interesting to me. And I hope it's starting to settle out, but but so because I remember that I never knew. I mean, not only did I not know what my job was, I remember I spent the first 3 years in this industry saying, "What's my job?" But I didn't even know what to call myself: wealth manager, financial consultant, vice president of investments. All of the associate vice president of investments, financial planner, financial advisor. So, what do we do with this? Because there's another realm. Like after we solve this problem, we got to solve are we an industry or profession problem?
Okay.
I get in so much trouble. I get in so much trouble. Like literally have people send me emails that like, how come you call us an industry? So I want to have a chance to clarify that as we go. So what do people, planner or advisor? It feels to me like we've narrowed in on planner or advisor.
So I make a distinction between them, but I think this is part of the stories we tell ourselves to just try to distinguish ourselves. Right. At least the evolution as I've experienced it, and this doesn't make it right, just the path I've lived was, first I was either a financial advisor or a financial consultant. This was very retail investment device stuff, sort of classic advisor job. Then I was a financial planner. And financial planner meant I was more holistic because I'm doing the whole planning process. I'm not just a financial advisor giving you advice on your IRA rollover. I'm a financial planner.
I thought that was a wealth manager.
What was that?
I thought that was a wealth manager.
No, a wealth manager is when they have more money.
A wealth manager is what, an advisor with more money?
No, a planner with more, a holistic.
Okay.
A holistic planner, but there's more things to be holistic for. You've got more wealth, so there's more wealth to manage. This was actually kind of tracked by Cerulli Associates. They did a study on this a couple of years ago that they could actually see. Now, this was probably dated. I think the titles have moved further, but there was a pretty clear delineation a number of years ago that people who are calling themselves financial planners tended to work with mass market, mass affluent, and people who call themselves wealth managers tended to be working with millionaires and multimillionaires, but basically doing the same holistic advice thing. It was sort of a wealth segmentation terms. Like going from advisor to planner was more comprehensive. Going from planner to wealth manager was doing it for more money, or doing it for clients who have more money. It was a wealth scale thing.
Yeah. And it also depended on which channel you were in, because it could be wealth manager was just a fancy way to sell more expensive shoes because you didn't know how to sell shoes. So you came and sold 7% surrender charge annuities to people. I'm sorry to get so, but I was going to say lipstick on a pig, right? Like
that's we just saw wealth management in our title, but yes.
Yeah, and again, that's the part of the problem is I went through a phase where I was like, I'm going to take back the name financial planning. Because here's what happened to me. I'd be on a plane. Somebody'd say, what do you do for a living? And I only had to answer a couple times to figure out that if I wanted peace and quiet, and I didn't want my seatmate to ask me anything the rest of the trip, all I had to do was say, turn and look them right in the eyes and say, I'm a financial planner. Because what they heard was, I'm going to try and sell you life insurance. Right? And I went through a period where I was like, no, we're going to take that name back. We're going to redefine for the public what financial planning means, right? Like it's the CFP board, like we're going to redefine what that means. And then I was like, that seems like a silly fight, right? Like, let's let other people, good fight, let's let other people do that. I'm never going to win that battle. So I was like, then what do we call ourselves? And the problem is everything's been sullied, right? Like wealth manager is such a good description, right? Except that, we've all seen the ads on TV from places that just sell product, calling themselves wealth managers. So I think the thing that's maybe, so what do you do?
Well,
what do you do?
So I look at this a few different ways. Like at the individual advisor level, I think you sort of have two choices. One is, pick the version of the titles and labels you like the most or dislike the least, and just own it as best you can. Hey, we are a firm that works with fairly affluent folks. We've stuck with what, we're a private wealth management firm. People who've got some wealth connect to that label. So, because bear in mind, it's not about what it means to us, because we know lots of different terms and labels. It is ultimately about what it means to the client. And yes, there's a challenge, I think, across the board. Any label that associates you with financial services makes people want to take at least one step back, which is particularly challenging in an airplane because it's enclosed. But so they just, hold up and don't turn you and face you again, so you get your quiet flight. But you can still try to find labels that will connect with the target audience that you want to reach. And connect with them accordingly. And, we found affluent people still kind of connect with wealth manager and private wealth management. So we're using that term as long as it continues to fit. The second option I think is out there, and this is maybe a little bit easier depending on your clientele and who you're working with, but particularly if you've got some kind of niche or specialization or area you're focused, pick a title that fits them, that fits their world. I had known an advisor who worked back with doctors, and I think he literally called himself a financial physician.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that real quickly. Let's just talk about financial physician, financial coach, family CFO. What do you think about that? What do you think about those?
Again, so twofold. One, whatever your client connects with, like if it works, if family
financial architect.
Yeah, if financial architect works and you want them to conjure up images of you building and constructing this planned thing for them, or your niche is actually architects, knock yourself out, right? Like if it works for them, it works. I think the one caveat to it that I would articulate from the other end is make sure you actually think about what the term means to the end client that you're working with. The one I'll probably actually pick on a little bit is I've seen a couple of advisors now trying these labels like I'm your family CFO. I'm like, I work in a business with a CFO. The job of the CFO is to handle the daily cash in and cash out of the business. Like, make sure we can pay our bills and make payroll and handle irregular billings and invoicing and AR and AP and all the things that go with a business that actually has a CFO. And if you work with affluent folks in business, like when you say CFO, they're thinking actual CFO. So you tell me you're my family CFO, I think you pay my bills. Because that's what the CFO does in my business. They make sure all the bills are paid. And that we make payroll and that the cash comes in when it's supposed to come in and goes out when it goes out. And that's not what most of us do. Even when we want to use a fancy label, like I'm your family CFO, like you are not CFOing my household unless you're in my bank account and you're making sure my bills get paid based on when my partner distributions come out.
Yeah.
That's what a CFO would do. So be careful with some of these labels. Like I think there is such thing in getting so fancy with the label that the image you create in the minds of your clients is not actually what you do. And now you're just setting yourself up for a problem because their expectations of your services are not what you deliver.
Yeah. I think that one actually did come up with a couple people with family CFO, like legally. I think there was some challenges there. Because I still think it's a really great descriptor, but I think the most important thing about what you said was own it. Because I could never do any of those. Like I just no way I could walk around saying I'm a financial coach. Now I say, look, I want to be careful about the way I just said that. I said that really facetiously. I know people, that's because that's how I would feel.
Right.
I know people who own it and do great. And so if you do,
because if you own it, you'll say it proudly and you'll say it confidently and you'll say it for real because you really feel it and believe it.
Same thing with financial architect, right? Or financial physician. That one would be, I could just never, but I know people who do. So I think that's the important part is just own something. And that's why it's so frustrating to me. We started the Society of Real Financial Advisors. I don't go around calling myself, when we made a decision, we
Do you
thought.
call yourself a real financial advisor?
Yeah, this is how if somebody says, if back when I was doing it, if somebody said, what did you do near the tail end of it before I sold my business, I would say, yeah, that's exactly how I'd answer. I'd go, I don't know, like I'm a financial advisor, but not what you're thinking. I'm a real financial advisor. That's what I would do. So, but I wouldn't put that on my business card, and I wouldn't walk around like at a cocktail part. Like I don't go to cocktail, but if somebody said, I wouldn't ever say.
I feel like you actually could own this on your business card, though, to like put real financial advisor
part of
on your
me
business
is
card. I know some regulators going to have some issue with that. I feel like they might. I don't know why, but like,
I don't know why either.
it opens a conversation. You can't put real financial advisor on your business card and hand it to someone and not have them ask, like,
as opposed to fake,
right? You're inviting them to the conversation. Yeah, well, let me tell you about how I'm different.
I agree. Michael, we should put a pin in this and remember to do a whole elevator pitch episode, because this is getting really close to that whole piece. Because yeah, I agree. It opens a conversation. So I think that's the important part, though, is owning it. But we thought carefully about the society. Should we name it real financial planner or advisor? And in the end, for our purposes, it was advisor seemed to be more broad. Like I know really great people who do amazing work that I would send my mom to, that don't call themselves financial planners. And I know some really great financial planners who sort of bristle at being called an advisor. But most of them will accept the idea that they're in the advisory space, right? So let's own it, I think, is our lesson. Like whatever you're gonna call yourself, make sure you don't get yourself in regulatory trouble, and then own it. Now let's talk about, because I want to keep this kind of tight, let's talk about the dreaded industry/profession. By the way, if you're going to send me an email about this, I've already gotten that email. You don't need to send it. I've already gotten it. Because I often say we're part of the traditional financial services industry. And I normally find myself having to, I'm like pause when I'm doing like a webinar or speaking at a conference. I'll say, look, I know. You're like, I'm preaching to the choir. You're not part of the industry. You are striving. You are a professional, and you're hoping that you belong to a profession, but nobody else knows that.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think this is one of those things that we put on ourselves. Like, have you ever met a doctor in the healthcare industry? Are they not a doctor because they're in the healthcare industry?
Or does it make them dirty because they refer to themselves as being part of the healthcare industry?
They are part of the healthcare industry. Now, doctors are a profession that are part of the healthcare industry.
Right.
Nurses is another profession in the industry. There are also drug companies that are part of the industry. There are hospitals that are part of the industry. There are insurers that are part of the industry. There's a whole lot of things in the industry. The professionals that deliver the services happen to be one of them.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And so, as I look at it, yes, we all work in the financial services industry, which takes away nothing from the fact that you can be a financial planning professional that works in the financial services industry.
Yep. Amen. And I like the where I came to that from was I always like to think of like how humans think of this.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody out there that knows the difference between you and the insurance salesperson and the bank teller, and that like they don't know. It took me 5 years to figure out the difference, from the inside.
Well, and I do think it's a fair point to be frustrated and lament that when you're serving your clients as a real financial planning professional, your clients may not actually understand how you are distinguished from the rest of your industry that has a lot of bad stuff associated with it, right? I mean, I still remember going through the financial crisis and needing to explain why our advisory firm is not the same as Lehman Brothers blowing up. Like, okay, let me explain to you. Financial services industry is kind of big, and like what we do in our financial planning firm is not the same as what Lehman did. But like that conversation came up more than once.
Totally.
In just explaining to people the whole ginormous landscape that is the industry and our tiny little professional piece of it. So I think sometimes we get a little too wrapped up in industry versus professional. Like we are both. We are professional in an industry because the industry is more than just the professionals. It's all the other products and services and providers and vendors and ecosystem that exists around it. I am very particular when I use the words. Like when I say industry, I mean industry. And when I say professional, I mean it, because I do try to use the terms in what I would consider the proper contextual use. But as you said, I know a lot of advisors that get all up in arms when they're called being part of an industry instead of a profession, and I get all up in arms when you say you're not part of the industry.
Right.
We are. Right. It's broader than us, and it doesn't. The healthcare industry takes away nothing from doctors. Acknowledging you're part of the financial service industry doesn't take away anything from being a financial planning professional.
Yeah, with the awesome caveat that we understand the frustration, because we both felt it. Yeah, like that. I mean, why do you think we have the Society of Real Financial? Because it's a cheeky way of saying, hey, there is a difference. Just because you haven't run into somebody who does this there are actual, in fact, this is where this came up a lot for me, was during the financial crisis, when journalists that I knew would say, I would tell them the work that a real financial planner or advisor was doing. Yep. And they would say to me, oh, that's quaint, like the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, like it was a fairy tale. And I'd be like, no, there's actually like real, professional, honest, full of integrity, technically rock star, sharp people in this business. I know them. You just don't ever hear about them because they're quietly doing their work over there, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is we get, you and I both get the frustration.
Yeah.
And I've just decided that that's a battle to fight every once in a while. Like I want to be involved in that battle every once in a while. And I'm glad there are big, organizations fighting that battle for us. And in the meantime, you and I decide what to call ourselves, own it, give somebody a professional experience so that they know the difference.
Yep.
We don't have to go back to the Supreme Court definition.
And likewise, I think the challenge that still lingers to me, again, industry and profession, I think, have some concrete definitions, some concrete labels. We can use them in the proper context, but we live within both. It's the individual title that I don't have a good solution for. Like industry and profession are some concrete terms. Advisor, planner, wealth manager, consultant, all those labels, all those titles on the business card. I don't know how we reclaim those, short of maybe a regulator that steps in and just tries to clarify it. I'm actually a fan of title reform. Like if you really want to clean up the industry, just tell firms, if you use any title that in any way, shape, or form possibly implies you're going to give advice or management services, you're a fiduciary.
Right.
And then let anybody who doesn't actually want to be in the fiduciary advice business walk their own titles back.
Yeah.
Because they don't want the liability. I think that actually is probably the best way that we can at least start to separate them. Because to me, the real distinction is who wears an advisor hat and who wears a salesperson hat.
Right.
And having titles that clearly delineate those. But in the advisor world, at least, I don't think we ever conquer the giant list of different titles, frankly, because we're always looking to differentiate ourselves. Hopefully not just overstate our position, which unfortunately a few people do, but we're always looking to differentiate ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think titles would be difficult to ever standardize because someone will always want to pick a different version to differentiate and distinguish themselves. And that's why I think we've evolved consultant, advisor, planner, wealth manager, whatever comes next.
Totally. It's just really interesting as you're talking to think about the difference between that and other professions. Where like if you call yourself this thing, like if you call yourself a CPA, you don't wonder what that means. I mean, obviously there's some difference in tax and personal and all that stuff and audit and all that, but but you know what it means. And it's a little different than just a designation.
Yeah.
And the same thing with a doctor. I mean, you don't know that you can trust a doctor just because they have MD by their name. You don't know that, but you do have some expectation that they went to medical school.
Yeah, well, and they do have some fairly clear defining terms like neurosurgeon. Like,
yeah. And
I know what you operate on brains, like it says it in the title, unless if you want to, deconstruct the Latin. Like there are a lot more, I think, concrete and consistent titles in other professions. Like you have a good point around that, but it's because either they share anchor points, right? Everybody who's a CPA went through that accounting degree and the CPA license. Everyone who says lawyer passed the bar exam.
Right.
Everybody who says MD has their medical degree, unless you're a financial advisor, planner, wealth manager, etc. In which case you may or may not have passed a 2-hour regulatory exam.
Yeah, and we've all heard those stories. Like, yeah, do you know how somebody was trying to tell me it was taking one of their children was starting as a financial advisor, and one of them was becoming a hairdresser, and the hairdressing licensing requirements were more stringent than the financial advisor one. Now, so the one thing I want to be clear about though is this is a big global fight. Like that's a big global fight, and I think at the end of the day for individual advisors, right? It's like, okay, great, like either pitch in on the global fight, volunteer your time, your money, your energy, whatever, to some organization, CFP, FPA, like whatever you think it would be best served. But in the meantime, while that global fight's going on, in the meantime, like let's pick a title. Let's not expect the title to do much for you, right? Like don't expect the title to become some marketing thing. Do really amazing work. So somebody looks at you as a professional. Like, let's just give one by one by one. Sometimes we get so caught up in this global fights that we forget, like, the only way this is really going to change is if every single real financial planner, advisor in the world, wealth manager in the world acts as if, whether they're regulated this way or not, acts as if they're a fiduciary, gives fantastic advice, gives somebody an amazing experience, a remarkable experience, like Seth Godin says, like worth remarking about, so that somebody else will tell, and slowly, one by one by one by one, we grow, right? Like that to me is the only way that we sort of compound influence around this.
Except if this works, then you won't have a way to turn off your airplane seatmate.
Yeah, I know. Come up with a new, what would be a urologist?
Well, I'm glad to know you have plan B.
Yes.
Plan B.
I'll have to lie. Cool, Michael. That's a good place to end. Lying. Always a good place to end.
Lying in urology. Fantastic.
Yes, exactly. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Carl.
Thanks.
Another good conversation.
Thank you. Yeah. Talk to you later.